All right, welcome everyone. This is Songtrust powering your global royalty collection webinar.
Hello, I'm Anna Bond. I'm the Senior Director of Global Business Development at Songtrust.
And my name is CJ Oliveri. I'm the Senior Director of Client Acquisition.
So today we're going to be covering a few topics. The first thing is you're going to learn the role of publishing in your global royalty collection, how it fits into your overall picture as an artist, and the importance of getting your songs registered early. We're also going to discuss the benefits of publishing administration, including global registration, ownership of your own copyright, and being able to keep creative control of your songs. We're going to help you understand the core mission behind Songtrust as a global publishing administrator that's truly accessible. And overall, we want you to know more about the general music publishing resources that we produce that helps you kind of better navigate the music industry in general, specifically publishing. And that's going to include our videos, webinars like this one, blog articles, and a lot more resources that we'll get into in depth.
All right, so first thing, why is music publishing important, right? So basically, what is music publishing? That's the first important thing to know, right? Just the fundamentals of what this part of the business is. Music publishing revolves around, copyright ownership and what your rights are. So the second you create something in any tangible form, when it comes to music, you own that copyright, and music publishing is the way that you're going to exploit and monetize that copyright. Specifically, the composition, right? The underlying components of the music that you're making. So, traditionally, back when you're looking at, 10 plus years ago, most of the music publishing revenue was generated from, live performance and radio play, and then, the reproduction of music in the form of like CDs and vinyl and cassettes and stuff like that, where today we're seeing the shift go towards the digital side. So now music publishing royalties are now more accessible to everyone that's creating music because, when your music's being streamed, you're generating both performance and mechanical royalties, which are coming from the music publishing side, the composition of your work. So yeah, year over year, music, the streaming of your music, we're seeing a 24% increase in how people are consuming music when it comes to streaming. So getting this stuff in order is super important. You need to make sure you understand how the side of the business works so you can make the best decisions possible for your career. Another really important thing that we want to focus on is understanding how the deals are set up when it comes to music publishing. There's a lot of different options that are going to be available to you. So understanding what these deal structures are, how they are going to impact your career and how you collect money and how you work with different writers and artists, all these things come and will play a factor in the eventual success of your career. So understanding, kind of the nitty-gritty stuff of these deals is really important as well. Yeah, we can kind of go into the next section here.
So I'm going to go over a kind of overview about a traditional publishing agreement versus publishing administration. So a quick overview of a traditional publishing deal, and this is probably what most people you think of or people you talk to think of when they think of music publishing, right? This is generally a very in-depth relationship. In addition to collecting your global publishing royalties, like those, the digital mechanical royalties that CJ mentioned from streaming, these traditional publishers, which can be majors, can be independents, are going to offer creative services like pitching your music for syncs, pitching for co-writes. They might even have a studio or songwriting rooms where you can collaborate with maybe other members of their roster to create songs. They also might be pitching covers or originals of your songs to pop stars. If you're a songwriter who doesn't perform your own works, that can be a very important aspect of what a traditional publisher is going to do. However, there's always a trade-off. So they're going to ask for a lot of ownership over your music and your copyrights and big admin commission fees in exchange for all their work, but they also might give you a big advance. So that's another option. Traditional publishing deals, though, are often not going to be available to developing artists and developing songwriters who are early in your career. Or when they might be offered early in your career, it might be not be very advantageous. So in order to get your rights collected, you might end up signing away your rights and then have a hit 5 years later or 5 months later, and suddenly you're in this disadvantageous deal that you're locked into. So an alternative is publishing administration. And so basically the administration portion, we say it's the doing taxes of the music industry. It is collecting from all of the global sources for performance royalties and mechanical royalties. Now that's your DSPs, that's going to be the performing rights societies all over the world. And that's what administration focuses on, is getting those back-end royalties as they come in, not the creative part. Some of the most important things about the difference between a publishing administration deal versus a traditional publishing deal is that publishing administrators generally allow you to keep 100% of your ownership over your copyrights. So this means you can pitch for licenses, market, handle your music however you want to. If you have relationships with music supervisors, if you have a great manager or a great team member who's handling that and you want to go with their vision, you're not sacrificing any of that, and you're not sacrificing any of the revenue. Often you'll also find that publishing administrators have a shorter term length. Since they're investing less in terms of kind of creative and marketing, they're willing to, let you leave after a year or two, a few years. And in that case, you have a lot more flexibility. Say you then do, have your hit and you have more leverage to get a traditional publishing deal after, a couple years with an administrator. That's an option that you have. And some publishing administrators also allow you to pick and choose what songs from your catalog you want them to administer. Generally, a traditional publisher is going to require your whole catalog, and they often are going to require that you actually produce a certain amount of acceptable, to their standard songs during their term. So they do have quite a bit of control over your creative career. With administrators, there's a lot more flexibility. They're often going to let you say, we'll take your back catalog. You can take your new catalog to someone else. It's a much more flexible arrangement, but you're still making sure that you're collecting those global mechanicals, those global performance royalties that are so crucial to your career and your income as a songwriter.
Yeah, so how does Songtrust fit into this whole thing? Songtrust will represent you as your publishing administrator on a global scale, right? So we don't replace your PRO. We are going to be the publishing aspect that is powering the collection and the registration of your works globally. Now, every songwriter still needs to work with a PRO. You have to be associated with a local or international society in order to get what's called an IPI number. That's your unique identifier within the publishing world. But then once you have that, you're associated to a society. You can then work with a publisher, publishing admin company like Songtrust, and we can then register your works globally. So if you think about streaming, right, you think if someone, for example, streams your song in the UK, the money from that song is going to be sent to the UK societies. What Songtrust does is we register your works with all these different societies. So wherever your song is generating income, we can bring that money back into your Songtrust account. So you won't even have to log into your local society, whether that's BMI, ASCAP, or PRS. We will be sending those registrations to those societies on your behalf. Everything will be managed strictly through your Songtrust account going forward. So we have an interactive dashboard that you'll have access to. It's on a song-by-song basis. You put in exactly what you'd like Songtrust to administer for, and then we will go and do all that back-end work, the very complex data matching process of getting you paid for the work that you're doing. So yeah, the other side of what we're doing, right, since we're just doing the administration of your work, we're not taking any creative control. We're not, saying that you have to go in this type of direction with your work. We're not taking any sync control either. So if there's requests coming in for you to get placements with TV or film, you have the ability to paper those deals all on your own without any fees getting taken out from Songtrust, right? So this allows a lot of creative freedom in that sense, and we're just doing the very kind of mundane, boring, a hard task of trying to get all your data to all these different societies so that when it is being consumed, we can get that money back for you.
So one thing to keep in mind when it comes to publishing, and this is something that is remarkably different from the master side, the music distribution side, the publishing timeline is much longer. and takes a much longer period of time to get everything registered than if you're working with a distributor. They're probably paying you monthly. They're able to get monthly statements from all their partners. It's very quick. Publishing has a lot more entities with a lot more different types of payment timelines and different types of registration timelines. And so overall, as an industry, it moves quite slowly. It's a very old industry, over 100 years old. And this is kind of one reason why it's important to register your songs as soon as they're distributed, because then you can start the clock. So as you can see, right, you submit your songs for registration with Songtrust. We send them to the collection societies. 6 weeks to 6 months is when the songs will be fully registered globally. And now that is a big gap. And that's because registering with your home society is relatively quick, but registering with some of our global partners who operate on different timelines and have different data requirements can take a lot longer. So generally for fully global registrations, you can see up to about 6 months. You start getting your first royalty checks generally 9 to 12 months. And again, that seems like a long time when you're used to getting paid like basically immediately for streaming from your distributor. But this is because of that global registration and collection process. International takes a lot longer even. It can often take 12 to 18 months to see your money from international performances, sometimes longer. There are some international societies that only pay once a year. So if you miss that cutoff, you're not getting paid for a whole nother year from that society. And then you start seeing your retroactive royalties generally around 15 to 18 months, about 6 months after your royalties start appearing. And that's the royalties for anything that was not collected up to the point where you registered the song. And that just takes a little bit longer to get going. So I mentioned retroactive royalties. Now we can usually, and we meaning the publishing industry, any publishing administrator can generally collect back about 2 or 3 years. Some sources, some countries, it's a lot longer, but 2 to 3 years is a really good estimate. And we can't be even any more precise than 2 to 3 years because that information is just not available. But what happens if you have a song that was streamed 100 million times 5 years ago and it was never collected? Unfortunately, that money goes into what is called the black box. And the black box is, to my mind, the most controversial part of the publishing industry, because that money, once it has, sat there uncollected for a period of time, is then distributed to the major publishers, who are then contractually bound to distribute it to their highest earners. So if you let your money sit out there uncollected, it will truly be going to Taylor Swift or Drake or Beyonce or Billie Eilish or whoever are the biggest earners for these major publishers. And I know that's kind of shocking. No matter how much I love Beyonce, I don't think she needs my money. But that is how the industry is working. And so it is very important that you get everything registered so that you collect all the money that is earned by your compositions.
Yeah, I think an important thing to also add, right? If it takes, up to 18 months to collect retroactive royalties, and your song, if it's already released, over a year ago, you're really on the clock to start collecting this money as soon as possible. So, since the registration process is a very long and drawn out process, it's important to get, like Anna said, to get these registrations in place as soon as you're releasing your music, so you don't risk having any of this money go into the black box.
Yeah. So we got a question that's a good one. So why would we continue to work with PROs that will take 12 months to pay? Are we obligated to work with PROs? And the answer is yes. So PROs, a very short version of what they do, is they are on the ground locally collecting for radio performances. They are collecting at live venues. They're collecting, say, if a bar or a theater is playing your music, in between bands. All of those types of performance royalties are collected by the PROs. It's not possible for one international entity to collect directly from these, millions, if not, hundreds of millions of sources worldwide. So we do need to work with the PROs in order to make sure that every single performance that our clients, see in usage of their songs is being paid on.
So here at Songtrust, one of the big big pillars for us as a company is education. So, we want to make sure that, we bring light to this side of the industry. It's been such a gray area for such a long time. And we really think that creatives, deserve it and deserve the right to understand how this system works and how to navigate that system. So, we've provided a lot of resources here at Songtrust, and we're going to continue doing that, whether it's, on our blog or if you're signing up for our weekly newsletter. We do these type of webinars all the time. We also do, weekly music publishing 101s that you can sign up for, or specific Songtrust sessions. We're always traveling around the world to do different workshops and events and speaking on panels. We have a modern guide to music publishing guide that you can download that really goes through all the fundamentals and, the little minute details about how publishing works. So I definitely recommend, going onto the website and getting that. We also have a help center that's like an interactive Q&A. So if there's any questions you have, you can go and try to get those answers at our help center as well. But yeah, we want to make sure that you are empowered to make the best decisions possible. If it's not Songtrust that's the best thing for you, that's fine, right? But we want to make sure that you understand what your options are, so that you make sure that you're not losing out on money that is, properly yours.
So overall, as an independent artist, we want to kind of leave you with this snapshot. These are the 4 places that you need to be covered to make sure that you're collecting all of the revenue that is being generated from the usage of your music. So first of all, distribution, right? Whether you're distributed through, a record label with a standard deal, or you're using someone like CD Baby, DistroKid, or Symphonic. This is how you're getting your music out to DSPs, which is, digital service providers like Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, everyone. The distributor is how you're doing that. They are pushing this out. They're collecting the money. They're paying you the money, right? That's the simple one. And this distributors work on the master side, and that is separate from the composition side. Without getting too much into it, imagine you have your original studio version of your song, and you've also done a live version of your song, and then your friend does a cover of your song. Those are 3 different masters because they're 3 different recordings. They could be distributed by 3 different distributors, but all of those are using the same composition. So that's the real difference between what a distributor or a label does and what a publisher does. We're just working on different sides of the rights in a song. Publishing is what we've talked about. You want to make sure that you're covered for global registration and royalty collection, so none of your royalties that you've earned go into the black box. You want to affiliate with your home collection society. You want to make sure that you and your songs can be found for those royalty payouts. And again, you do need to be registered with your home society, and that's so that they are able, kind of like I described earlier, to do all of their collections for the, myriad millions of sources of the performing revenue within your country. And then there's sound exchange. So digital performance royalties are a type of royalty that is earned on the master side and for the performer for things like streaming radio, so like Pandora. And outside of the US, it's a similar type of right called neighboring rights. Those are also earned on the master side for radio play, and there are a lot of neighboring rights providers out there that you can sign up with. But that picture will enable you to really be able to collect on everything you're due when it comes to the distribution and performance of your music.
I see that Jefferson just asked if Songtrust can collect on sound exchange. Since it is on the master recording, that's not something that a publisher like Songtrust would be able to collect on. So unfortunately, you do have to go directly to them to collect that money. All right, so yeah, we're at the Q&A section. So I think this is definitely the most helpful part, right? So we can try to address some of your exact questions. So we'll go through a few of them now. The first one we're saying, is Songtrust considered a CMO? No, right? Songtrust is a publisher. We work with CMOs and PROs, mechanical societies and digital licensing agencies all throughout the world, but we ourselves are not a society. We work with them. They're our partners. We need them to collect the local royalties and revenue that's generated in these places, but we make sure that all of your data, all of Songtrust clients' data, is registered at these places so that they know who they can attribute those royalties to, and they can send them back to us.
A similar question someone asked, when we say PROs, do we also mean MROs? And so CMOs are basically the term for PROs and MROs. Some countries have CMOs who actually collect both. So when we're talking about PROs, we're talking about performing rights. When we're talking about MROs, we're talking about mechanical rights. And when we're talking about CMOs, those are organizations that collect both things. We have another question. My husband could be called a legacy artist. Can Songtrust help him recover past songwriting royalties? This is definitely possible. Again, we are generally restricted to the past couple of years. And when it comes to live performances, generally, most societies will accept setlist submissions back about 6 months. Some are a little bit longer, but generally it is that 2 to 3 year window for collecting back royalties.
Yeah, I think another important thing to touch on is, especially when it comes to streaming, just because your song was released maybe 3 or 4 years ago, doesn't mean that, that's when the clock starts for all of your royalties, right? That song can still be getting streamed today, and that individual stream is going to have the traditional publishing timeline associated to it, right? So it's not at the point of release, it's the point of consumption of the music. So just because it was released a while ago doesn't mean you're not able to collect the royalties that are being generated from the last 2 to 3 years.
Right. I have a really good example. We have a client who released a song in the 90s. Obviously, streaming didn't exist then, but he had a huge placement in a movie a couple years ago and got, about 25 million streams as a result of the song's increased popularity. We're going to be able to collect on all of those streams because they happened within the past 2 years, even though the song itself is 20 years old.
Yeah, I just saw a question. Does Songtrust register your songs with Harry Fox once they become your pub admin? Yes, right? Harry Fox is a mechanical licensing agency, so we work directly with them here in the US. We also work with Music Reports and MediaNet, which are the other mechanical agencies here in the US. The way you can think about it is, there's all these different societies all throughout the world that are collecting money from their home territories, right? What Songtrust does is basically a giant network that allows you to be associated with all of them and collect the royalties that are generated from them. So by signing up with Songtrust, you're getting access to over 50 different performance, mechanical, and digital licensing services instead of just going to your one PRO or to your one mechanical agency.
Another question, publishers keep control but also give advances. Does Songtrust? Songtrust does not give advances. And that's because, again, we are not taking creative control and we're not taking over any ownership. Our standard deal is a 15% admin fee for a 12-month term. And we're really focused on the flexibility and the ability for our clients to be able to make the decisions that are right for them, whether that's continuing to renew with Songtrust or to go somewhere else. For a traditional publisher, to give an advance is a lot easier because they're maybe signing you for 5 or 10 years. They're getting your whole catalog. They're getting everything. With Songtrust, you could send us one song and give all your songs to someone else. So we have a lot more flexibility, which means we aren't able to do advances.
There was another question about how does Songtrust interact with international CMOs, right? We directly affiliate with these societies as members. So this allows us to avoid doing sub-publishing agreements, whereas a lot of traditional publishers will use a local publisher within that territory to register the works, but to also market and promote the music in that territory. We avoid that and avoid the fees and the additional timeline by going direct to the societies and affiliating so that we can actually place the registrations there ourselves, and they'll directly send us the money back in return.
So another question, does Songtrust also collect live performance royalties from the PRO? If so, how is this handled? So this depends on what your PRO is. So everyone except for basically BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC, the US PROs, allow publishers to submit set lists for live performance royalties. The US PROs do not. So for US PROs, as of now, you do need to log into your writer login because only writers are allowed to submit set lists. And submit them there. However, there has been news that apparently the US PROs are considering changing this, which would enable you to use Songtrust setlist submissions tool which we use to submit those set lists directly to our global partners. If you're outside of the US, if you're registered, say, with PRS, you are able to submit to BMI and ASCAP using our tool. It's simply for US writers have to submit directly to the US PROs.
There's a question about, the fees associated with Songtrust. So with Songtrust, there's a one-time registration fee of $100 per collecting songwriter, and then we have a 15% commission on the publisher share of royalties we bring in. So the writer share of the performance royalties will always flow to you from your society, uncommissioned by Songtrust. The publisher share, we have a 15% commission on.
So another question about registration, we're getting a lot of those. I created an account with Songtrust and ASCAP and registered every song on Songtrust. Do I need to register every song on ASCAP too? No. One of the best things about using Songtrust is that we are a one-stop registration shop. So once you register your songs with us, we're sending them out to your home society as well as our network of 50 global affiliates. So you don't have to go to the ASCAP website. You don't have to go to the Harry Fox website. Like, you can only do everything through our very easy to use dashboard, which is, in our opinion, easier to use than all those partners' dashboards.
What's the benefit of creating a publishing account with BMI or ASCAP? So if you're going to work with a company like Songtrust, there's really no need to do that because we are going to act as your publisher. But if you did want to, have your own publishing company, like your own LLC, or even a vanity publishing company to have your name on it, that would really be the only benefit. Also, if you wanted money to flow through for tax purposes to a different LLC, that could be a reason why. But if you work with a publishing company, they are going to be the publisher representing you. So you don't need to do that if you're going to work with a company like Songtrust.
And in terms of our royalty payouts, we have a question. Are you able to view royalty payments broken down by song? Yes, you are. And I would recommend checking out one of our video demos, which gets into our royalty statements. We actually offer a line by line, partner by partner, payment by payment. So you can see basically every streaming performance that you're getting paid for per song. You can download your statements by songwriter. You can download them by song. You can download them by there's a number of ways to look at them, a number of ways to filter the data. But in terms of like the availability and the transparency, you can see if you want to look at every single line of every single performance, it'll be tens of thousands. But you have the availability to look at that data. We also provide kind of like top line analysis so you can see it, in a pie chart or a line graph, but you do have the accessibility to every single piece of royalty data associated with your account.
So someone had a question about the collection of mechanical royalties from places like Harry Fox Agency, CMRRA, and Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange is not mechanical royalties. Those are performance royalties. But in terms of Harry Fox Agency, CMRRA, MediaNet, there's Music Reports, another one here in the U.S. We work with them just as we would work with any society, right? We send our clients' data to that society. Once that data is there, they license that to the different streaming services that they work with. The streaming services will then, send the money back through like Harry Fox Agency, for instance. And since our songs are registered there with the proper information, they can then send that data and the royalties back to us on behalf of our clients. So it's just like we work with any other PRO or CMO. Working with mechanical agency is no different.
So we got an interesting question. Could this be used for podcast streaming to receive royalties from your podcast? So performance royalties organizations and mechanical agencies are only focused on music usage. So say, for example, you uploaded a 5-minute song that was not actually a song. You uploaded to Spotify, it's spoken word, or it's a comedy album, or it's like your cat meowing. Those do not fall under the same collection rules because they're not music. These are all very specifically focused on musical compositions. For the same reason, a comedy album is going to receive master side royalties, but the PROs aren't going to be collecting on every kind of public performance of a comedy album because it's spoken word, because it's not music. Occasionally there will be controversial questions when it comes to a PRO determining what is and isn't music. And that's something that, that they're dealing with. But in terms of a podcast, that itself would not be considered a musical performance.